This is Join Us in France, episode 294. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and on today's episode, I asked you what your favorite stores were in Paris on the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook, and you talked about so many wonderful places. Clothing, fashion, food, accessories, cosmetics. It's all here. So this is kind of a hodgepodge of a list you can make of places you want to visit on the next time you get to be in Paris. The one thing that I won't go into today is kitchen supply stores because I've already done an entire episode about them, and that was episode 243. Now, I built this list before the pandemic when everybody was still able to travel and the group was really, really active. It's not like that as I record this, but I am sure travel will happen again. Probably not until 2021, but, time flies. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/294, and I'll post photos of these stores and the items they sell on Instagram this coming week. And thank you to those of you who submitted photos for this episode. Follow Addicted to France on Instagram to see them. So let's talk about shopping in Paris. It's actually funny for me to talk about shopping because I'm not much of a shopper myself, but I guess it's an advantage because then it means that to get me there, it really has to be good, right? I'm not like these people who just go out to shop because they can't think of anything else to do. Going shopping is the last thing I want to do. So if I go, it must be good. If I need something, I'll go get it. But in a way, I shop more in the US because it's different than what I see all the time. And when I'm in the US, I'm on vacation, so I have more time on my hands, and I really enjoy, the Costco's, the malls. I look around, and I always buy a lot of things in the US. And I think it's because I don't get to. It's what you can't have that you want, right? So some of you want salted butter and you're just dying for some salted butter. Well, me, I just want these socks that I love that I can only get in America. I guess that's human nature. Because it's just different from daily life. So I asked on the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook what your favorite stores are when you're visiting France. And I got a lot of answers. A lot of you have visited France more than once. Some of you are definitely repeat offenders. And so it's a fun list. So let's get started with a list, and you'll find it all written down on joinusinfrance.com/294. All right, let's start with department stores and grocery stores. The first one was BVH. It's most of you will see the one in BVH Marais, in the Marais, right? I like to go there to look for scarves, but they have all sorts of clothing, fashion, food, and they also have a big hardware store in the basement. So it's a fun store. It's not super expensive, unlike some of the other department stores I'm going to mention. It's quite approachable, but it's really nice. The other one that got a lot of mentions is Monoprix. And that's like the French Target, This is the one that got the most votes. Almost everybody mentioned Monoprix, that they love Monoprix. Now, what can I tell you about Monoprix? It's got a little bit of everything. It's a department store. It's not super fancy, but they carry a lot of good products at a good price. And they are in a lot of locations in Paris and other places. They are normally in city centers. Monoprix, I have never seen one that was kind of a place that you drive to, like outside of a big city, in an outside of the city kind of mall situation. They're always downtown. So It's a really good place. Galerie Lafayette also got a lot of mentions, but that's more expensive. This is for people who intend to spend more money, and of course the Galerie Lafayette in Paris, the one on Boulevard Haussmann, is absolutely beautiful. We talked about it in the episode we did with Elise on department stores in Paris. You cannot, Galerie Lafayette, in most places in France, they have, the food is in the basement. Most of these department stores, that's what they do. But the one on Boulevard Haussmann, it's actually, all the food stuff is actually in a separate building across the street from the one that has the big dome. Yeah, you must go see the Galerie Lafayette in Paris, just to see it. It's just, and when I say in Paris, I mean Boulevard Haussmann, because they have others that are just like a normal mall place. Yeah, and the food at Boulevard Haussmann, it's called Lafayette Gourmet, or Lafayette Maison, maybe? Anyway. Another one that a lot of people mentioned is Printemps. And the one that so there's one on Boulevard Haussmann, obviously, very close to the Galerie Lafayette. But there's also a Printemps under the Louvre. And that one seems to, I've never been to that one. That one seems to get quite a few votes. But I like the mall under the Louvre, really. Last time I was there, I was walking to the metro and walked in front of the Bose store and walked out with brand new Bose headphones. Yeah. I did that. With me, it's not the dresses that are going to get me or the jewelry. It's always the technology. So there you go. So Printemps store under the Louvre, and the whole mall, le Carrousel du Louvre is what the name of that mall. It's very nice. Another place that people mentioned is Au Bon Marché in Saint-Germain neighborhood. We talked about it in episode 287. Despite the name, Bon Marché, this is not cheap at all. Not even a little bit cheap. I have never bought anything there, but it's a beautiful store, worth a visit if you're in the area just for that. Another one in the same kind of neighborhood is La Grande Pizzuri. That's on Rue des Sèvres in the 7th. I almost added that one to my Saint-Germain-des-Prés tour, but it was going to make it too long. And so, I kept it out. But it's a really nice place to go to. It's an interesting kitchen supply store, which is not in Les Halles, in the neighborhood of Les Halles, which is different. And it's also a wonderful food store with a lot of nice, beautiful, expensive items. So Grande Pizzuri is also highly recommended. Another one is Mariage Frère. That's a place for expensive teas. And they have several locations throughout Paris. And I don't think they serve tea in any of their stores. I think it's just a place where you go buy tea, which makes no sense to me, but whatever. It's kind of expensive tea, though. I don't know. If I'm going to buy tea in Paris, I'll just go to Marks and Spencer's. They have lovely English tea that I can't get in Toulouse, so there you go. That's me. Cheapo me. Maison Plisson. It's 93 Boulevard Beaumarchais. It's a bit pricey also, but excellent food. Now, let's move on to wine stores. The only one that was mentioned is Devigny, which is a fancy wine store in Paris. I'll put a link in the show notes for that. One that you'll find everywhere is Nicolas. That's chain. And there are also independent wine stores all over Paris. And if you like wine, you should walk in and see what they have. Don't expect tastings, though, at those wine stores. They are mostly, unless they're having a special event and they are promoting a special bottle or a case of something or other, they normally don't let you taste. It's just a place where you can get good advice for the type of event that you want your wine for. And, it's not the everyday wine that people drink at home. It's more like for a special thing, Now let's talk about bakeries. La Durée came up a lot. La Durée is very nice. I don't know what to say. I mean, they make a lot of macarons. They make a lot of good stuff. They've been around since 1862. But by now, they are all over the place. They're even abroad, in big cities all around the world. So I guess that's not as special. Another one that's big is Pierre Hermé. They do macarons, beautiful pastries, several locations in Paris, including one on Rue Bonaparte that I include in my Saint-Germain tour. It's lovely. They are famous for making unusual flavor macaron. So if you want to have, I don't know, spicy macaron or something, this is the place to go. Another one that was mentioned, Bakeries, is des Gato Et Dupont. There are 2 stores, one on Rue du Bac and one in Montparnasse. And I must admit that I've never been. Generally speaking, there are lovely bakeries all over Paris. I have recommended all the time that you don't, if you're in front of a bakery, try it. You don't need to make a special trip to go see bakeries in Paris because they are everywhere, and they've all won awards at some point. So I don't know. It's to me, bakeries. To me, that going to bakery is not it's not a special thing. If I see one that looks good, that smells good, I go in and enjoy it. Cafes. The one that got mentioned by everybody is Angelina's. And here it's a problem because, again, people want recommendations for cafes and you don't really need. I mean, we have historical cafes and I take you to them in my Saint-Germain-des-Prés tour in particular. But, do you need to go to a special cafe in Paris? They're all pretty nice and they all serve pretty much the same thing. Angelina's has this one thing that I really, really like. It's called Mont Blanc. It's a meringue inside, and then outside it's a chestnut paste. It's not something that most Americans would enjoy, I figure, because you're not used to chestnut paste. So, for me, it's a treat. Whenever I go to Angelina's, that's what I get because I can't get it anywhere else. So there you go. Cheese store, I was surprised. There was only one that was mentioned in the 4th arrondissement, La Ferme Saint-Aubin. Rue Saint-Louis. C'est rue Saint-Louis en Lille, in the 4th. There are wonderful cheese stores all over Paris. Some of them have bits that you can taste. So one nice one is right outside of the Saint-Paul metro station, but they are everywhere. I almost started to work on a food tour for Paris. But then I figured maybe this would not be ideal to do as a voice map tour because the whole point of a food tour is to be with someone who's going to know which items are different in this particular store, which of course I could find out, but also to get them to give you tasting, So, I don't know if I'll ever do that. Maybe. Because food tours are definitely very fun. Let's talk about perfume and cosmetics. Fragonard came up. That's like a classic. It's all over France. They have soaps and they have perfumes and they're nice. Another one that I was surprised by is City Pharma, Rue du Four in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. They have a lot of skincare products and advice from the ladies. When this person, whenever she goes to Paris, she always goes there because she gets good advice, great skincare products, and she loves it. Another store in the Carrousel du Louvre, so that's under the Louvre, Caudalie. Caudalie, also they sell cosmetics and things. One that I almost included in the Saint-Germain-des-Prés tour is l'Officine Universelle Bully. It's a historical beauty store in Saint-Germain. It's a little bit out of the way for where I was taking you on the tour, so I left it out. But l'Officine Universelle Bully is definitely worth a visit because it's a beautiful historical store. Somebody mentioned Marius Fabre and said, I can't live without the Orange Cannelle soap. Savon Marseille, olive oil face and body cream. Yeah, soaps are wonderful, and if there's one that you like the smell of it, it's fantastic. I switched to washing with bars of soap a few many months back, and I find it much better than the liquid stuff. I don't know why. For so many years, I used liquid stuff because I grew up on bars of soap. My listeners were, over 50 probably. We've all done that. And then they introduced all these liquid things and we switched to that. But really, the bars of soap are better, in my opinion. But they don't need to be fancy. I found pleasing bars of soap in every brand and unbrand and whatever. Another place that gets mentioned for perfumes and cosmetics is Ivroch. That's a chain. They have stores all over France, and they're big into samples at Ivroch. You can't walk out of there without having like a stack of samples. Jewelry stores. So the first one that was mentioned is Les Néreides. It's a pretty store, and it's got they do romantic costume jewelry, which I'm not sure what that means. I've never been there. There's a place in the Marais called Merci, and they sell bracelets. Another place called Frida Freire. It looks like the word fried, but in French we would say Frida Freire. They do jewelry, beads, buttons, sequins. They've been in Paris since 1886, and they are in the 2nd arrondissement, 13 Rue du Caire. Not one I've been to either. Another jewelry store is Lady Bird on Rue des Abbesses. They sell quirky jewelry, hosiery, and other unique fashion accessories. Nice. I've been on Rue des Abbesses many times. I don't remember that one, but it's some of the people who answered this question in the group loved it. Galerie Le Sud de Paris in the Marais. They sell beautiful made glass jewelry and art pieces. Nice. Okay, so yeah, Le Marais is great for shopping, and lots of jewelry stores and lots of fashion stores. But so is Saint-Germain-des-Prés. There's a lot of that too in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Okay, let's talk about clothing stores, fashion, and secondhand stores. IKKS, so that's IKKS. There are several throughout Paris and France. They have stores for men, for women, for kids. It's fashions, it's clothing. Another place that gets mentioned is Réciproque in Paris. It's a place, c'est un dépôt-vente. So, how do you say that in English? Un dépôt-vente. It's a place where confinement store. That's what it is. Confinement store. They have a surface of 700 square meters. So that's what, 1,000 square feet maybe. They have luxury fashion items and decorative objects, and they're in the 16th rue, 95 rue de la Pompe. If they're in the 16th, you know how if you're going to go to a secondhand store, it's better if you go to the rich neighborhoods, where it's the same in Paris. The 16th, Réciproque Paris probably has a lot of good stuff. Sœur, on number 88 Rue Bonaparte. You walk right in front of it on my Saint-Germain tour. I don't know why I didn't point it out, but it's a clothing store, fashion, and so forth. Derry, Derhy. I know absolutely nothing about that one, but I'll put a link in the show notes to their website. A place for beautiful cashmere is Crimson. La Petite Marukinori is a small neighborhood store in Montmartre where they sell recycled leather goods. Oh, La Petite Marukinori, that sounds good. And Inès de la Fressange, it's a store on Rue Grenelle in the 7th. And of course, for bags, Longchamp. Of course, Longchamp. Who hasn't heard of Longchamp? Hérault, that's for shoes. That's Heyraud. I have never been there. And of course, Louis Vuitton. And the original store is on Place Vendôme. It's a very posh. Yeah, it's worth a visit just to see the store. Let's talk about art supply stores and hobbies. Sennelier, that's a place where Picasso and Degas bought their art supplies. It's a darling, crowded store with beautiful paint. So if you're an artist, you must go visit Sennelier. La Bien-Aimée, it's a yarn store, amazing hand-dyed yarn. And we still have quite a few yarn stores, but this one sounds like if it's hand-dyed, that's got to be special. La Maison du Pastel, that's a place where they sell supplies for artists. It's in the 3rd arrondissement, 20 Rue Rambuteau, for the artists who are listening to me. And of course, La Droguerie near Les Halles. It's a wonderful wool and craft shop, and apparently it's the best one ever. Let's talk about home decor and gifts, which a lot of people ask where to get gifts when they're in Paris. Well, these are some places you could go. Durance, they sell amazing candles. Pylons, but I think that's a chain. They're everywhere. They sell fun-looking little things, inexpensive gifts with, Eiffel Towers and things like that. Yeah. Somebody mentioned the Marché aux Fleurs on the Ile de la Cité. Yeah, sure. A very nice place that I talk about in my Ile de la Cité tour. Astier de Villatte. This is a place for ceramics, candles, and fantasy items. Astier de Villatte. Desrolles. I love this place. This is in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. It's included in my voice map tour of Saint-Germain. It's whimsy, nature gifts for naturalists and gardeners. It's totally unique. You've never seen anything like it. Desrolles is a place you have to go. Even if you don't like shopping, you will love Desrolles. It's really whimsical. Bazar Thérapie. It's a little bit of everything for the home. It's in the 10th arrondissement, so that's a little bit out of the way. 15 Rue Beaurepaire in the 10th. And then somebody mentioned Truffaut. That's funny because that's a chain. It's all over France. It's a nursery. They do home decor items, things for pets. Yeah, I've bought things at Truffaut, although these days I try to avoid because they still sell puppies and kittens and birds and things, and I don't approve. So I try to go other places. And another place for home decors and gifts is La Chaise Longue in the 16th. I bet they have some nice stuff in there. To finish up, an ice cream shop in Paris. What do you think I'm going to say? Yeah, Bertillon. Everybody wants to go to Bertillon. I think their ice cream is fine. I don't see what the big deal is. I've had equally good ice cream that was not made by Bertillon, but some people swear by it, and their original store is nice looking. It's all right. I don't know. Sometimes people make a big deal out of things that I'm not sure why it is. So anyway, that's the end of my list. I think for people who love shopping, Paris is a paradise. And if you love shopping, you should definitely visit the Marais, visit Saint-Germain-des-Prés, because these concentrate a lot of beautiful shopping places. But also, if you like shopping malls, I must say that Les Halles is a big mall that's very nice, and also the one that I've mentioned a few times already, Le Carrousel du Louvre, underneath the Louvre. If you're not into art, but some of your family want to go see the art, you can go downstairs, under the Louvre to see the shopping. Thank you, patrons, for giving me a precious gift, the time to produce this podcast. Your few dollars a month make it all possible, and in these times of great uncertainty and anxiety, it is so appreciated. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us, PATREON. Join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you to all of you for supporting the show. Some of you for many years now. You are fantastic. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Jeff and Marcia Hildebrand and Sifik, Maura Pugh, and Ernesto De Jesus for pledging to support the show on Patreon this week. Thank you also, Amanda Brinkerhoff, for doubling your pledge. And if you're starting to think about taking a trip to France because the pandemic is under control in your country, as it is in France, I can help you make a custom itinerary day by day with suggestions on what to see, what to do, where to eat, how to get there, and how to navigate this whole pandemic thing in France. We talk it over on the phone, and then I send you your own trip plan with all the details. It'll cost you $50, but it'll save you weeks of research. Email Annie at joinusinfrance.com to set that up and write itinerary review in the subject line. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny you wouldn't have otherwise, before you go shopping on Amazon, go to the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com and click on the Amazon ad, which then turns around and gives me a small commission on anything you've purchased on Amazon. And thank you so much. For my personal update this week, I was really happy with the July 14th celebration, Bastille Day, as you say in English. I watched it on TV because nobody was watching it live in Paris because you couldn't go line up the streets like we normally do. The emphasis was on expressing appreciation for all the frontline workers who kept plugging away during the lockdown and experienced extraordinary levels of demand for their services, especially medical services. So that includes everyone who works in public hospitals, the secretaries, the cleaning crews, the folks who provide the meals in the hospitals, the nurses and the doctors, of course. But they also invited cashiers, garbage collectors, police officers, firemen, daycare workers who stayed open to take care of the kids for all those essential workers who had to keep working. This was different, like I mentioned, because the public was not invited, and also because they paraded around the Place de la Concorde. That's the one with the big obelisk in the middle, right? They chose to do that because this was a much smaller affair this year. There were like 2,000 soldiers instead of the usual 4,000 plus. They only showed off one tank. Normally there's a whole slew of tanks and military this and that. They had no motorized gendarme or anything, no horses. The parade is usually 40 minutes long. This one only took 20 minutes, but it was a very emotional 20 minutes. They kept the flyover by the Patrouille de France, as well as flyover by lots of planes, including the A400M, that I worked on that program for a couple of years, a while back. So it was fun to see that. Anyway, and the Patrouille de France did this really cool thing. The first time they flew over the Champs, they drew the normal three lines of blue, 3 lines of white, and 3 lines of red. But their second flyover was 1 blue, 5 white, and 1 red. The almost all-white flag was, of course, a salute to the white blouses of medical workers. The other thing that was really symbolic is Place de la Concorde itself. Here's a tidbit you probably don't know, even if you're a big Francophile. The name Place de la Concorde has an important meaning. Une concorde, or un concordat in French, is what you arrive to after a period of strife. It's a union of wills. And this plaza has gone through many names. The latest, before Place de la Concorde, was Place Royale, and it had a massive statue of Louis XVI in the middle. The revolution happened and they were looking to rename the plaza. And that's when they chose this name, hoping to unify all French people. This year, they had a massive banner that said, Une nation engagée, unie et solidaire, which is kind of hard to translate, but something like a nation that is committed, united, and supportive. The word solidaire is difficult to nail down in English. It's a mix of supportive, interdependent, inclusive, cohesive. The idea is we're all in this together, ensemble. Now, I know that in part, this is wishful thinking. Obviously, not everybody in France faces the same challenges and feels the same level of support. But generally speaking, the government has really tried to serve everyone. They tried not to leave anybody behind, and they have spent a lot of taxpayer money to achieve that goal. The pandemic has not been politicized in France. It's about public health and keeping us far away from ever needing to shut down again. Medical personnel also got a big raise. Everyone from medical secretaries to the doctors. Cost to the National Health Service is 9 billion euros annually. This is not a one-time bonus. They also got bonuses several months in a row. It's a raise to their base salary. Admittedly, French nurses were paid less than their peers in Germany, so this probably catches them up to the standard, but this was a big thing and well-deserved, and something for which nurses and doctors have gone on strike repeatedly, and they finally got it. Masks will now be mandatory in all indoor spaces in France. At first, they said they'd start August 1st, but then the new Prime Minister, Monsieur Castex, said, no, we'll start on July 20th. And that's because a few places are seeing an uptick of cases. We're not talking thousands, but even, an uptick of a couple dozen is worrisome. We've only had a couple of anti-mask protests in France, but a bus driver was killed in Narbonne after getting into a fight with a couple of young men who didn't want to pay the fare and didn't have masks. Now, masks have been mandatory in public transportation since May 11th, and they've started putting tough guys, bouncers kind of people on some bus lines where they know they might have a problem with some of the people who take the bus. In my experience, French people who dislike masks are not generally aggressive about it. They complain, but then they comply. If just barely, under the nose kind of compliance. It makes sense because between March and May, hundreds of thousands of French people were fined for being outside without a good reason. By comparison, wearing a mask does not feel like a big burden. But French people like to complain. The same folks who thought it was an outrage that the government couldn't provide surgical masks for everyone in March are now bitching that masks are going to be mandatory. I think the new mask rule will actually reassure a lot of people who didn't feel safe going places without it. At least if everyone is going to wear a mask, some may go back to, cultural events, maybe the movies, maybe they'll go to the gym. But I think where it's going to make a big difference is that they may go back to shopping malls. I know it will be freeing for me. A big problem still is family gatherings. I'll be going to a big birthday party for my brother-in-law this coming Saturday. So by the time you hear this, it'll have happened already. My sister is throwing the party. It's been scheduled for a long time. She's spent a fortune on it. She's rented a reception hall. It's semi-indoors. It's this beautiful glass walls with big doors, beautiful old columns. Anyway, it's gorgeous. But it's mostly enclosed. And of course, it opens into a big garden space. And my sister is not worried at all about the virus. Like she doesn't mind the masks because she's a sales rep. And so she has to go visit customers all day long. She will wear a mask whenever she's meeting customers, but she thinks it's over the top. And, when I told her I'd bring hand cleaning gel, to the party. She said, "Oh, you're right. I didn't think of that." Oh my. But on the other hand, she's giving me a hard time for going out to walk too early in the morning when it's still kind of dark. She's like, "You never know what might happen on these country roads." I'm like, "What's going to happen? Nothing." I'm a lot more worried about the virus, and she's worried about me walking by myself. Anyway, well, with two dogs. Anyway, she's invited 65 people, and I don't know most of them. If there was more virus going around in my region, I wouldn't go at all. But we only have 47 people hospitalized here for COVID-19 in the whole of Occitanie. So Occitanie is home to almost 6 million people. So clearly the odds are in our favor that nobody's going to be sick. The number of daily new infections in the area is very low. Some days it's 0. Some days it's a handful. So I'll go, but I'll spend as much of my time as possible in the garden, and I'll stick to soda because I want to keep my wits about me. But it's difficult, really, deciding what to do in family situations like that. I have no qualms putting off purchases and visits to stores or whatever, or even visiting museums or places like that. It's fine. I can't do it right now. It's fine. But it's hard to be perceived as antisocial when it's a family thing. And I love these people. I want to be there, but yeah. So this party is probably the riskiest thing I'll do all summer. About the French immersion class I mentioned on episode 288, I now have a list of over 20 people who are interested, which makes for enough of a group to proceed. However, most of them are U.S. citizens and they can't travel right now, or for the foreseeable future, in my estimation. So let's wait and see what happens. If you're on the list, I'll email you. And if you want to get on the list, email me, Annie@joinusinfrance.com. But just to recap, this is a full French immersion week in a tiny village near Toulouse. There are accommodations on the site, and they're very nice. Cooking classes. We'll do a few local visits. Of course, it's going to be language classes with certified teachers who do this year round. I'm not going to be teaching the classes. I'll just talk. I'll just make you speak French. It's a lovely site. The owner and her husband are charming, and their English is really, really rusty, so you have to speak French to them. She's a wonderful cook. She loves to make the most of wonderful local products. It'll be a lot of fun with apéro every night, and this is a site that gets used for events all the time. It's just that normally it's for weddings or things like that. This is going to be a longer thing, so it's going to be a bigger deal to organize. So I want to wait and not organize it until I know people can travel. And since I don't really go anywhere, I've been listening to books. This week, I've been on a classics kick. I listened to The Hobbit and then Tom Sawyer. And I like Tom Sawyer better. I guess both are children's literature, but I don't know if kids can really understand those books. Teenagers maybe, but it seems like a lot to ask from kids. And of course, growing up in France, these are not books I had to read in school, so it's fun to discover them for the first time now. And also, I've bought so many books on, the discount email list, like BookBub or whatever. It's getting ridiculous. I have too many books, and I'll get to them eventually, And the worst thing is when Elise and I are together, and I get a notification about one of these emails, and we look through it together. She loves mysteries, and so she's getting me to buy all these mysteries. Anyway, eventually I'll read them. And I've also continued to work on the book I'm writing, the best of the podcast kind of book. I have a good system down now, but sometimes it's really hard to motivate myself to write when I know that demand for travel books is at its lowest. Although, this is a good time to write it because now I have time. So, but I have to look at it long term. Travel will happen again. It's just it's a matter of being patient. if you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate it if you'd share it with someone, show them how to listen to the podcast, and give them something cheerful to listen to once a week. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week of trip planning, working, staying home, whatever it is that you're doing. But please stay safe, and I'll talk to you next Sunday. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.